Hi, this is Robin, and this video will be how to transform photos into pop art using Photoshop. Now, if you're not familiar, pop art actually emerged in the mid-1950s, but it reached its height in the 1960s with artists like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein, who both drew from photography as well as mass media and print cultures to create very bold graphic works. And I pulled just these two examples to show you. So this very famous silk screen of Marilyn Monroe by Andy Warhol, and then again the more comic book or comic style kind of look by Roy Lichtenstein, and he popularized this look of using the Ben-Day dots. So I'll show you at the very end an optional bonus step about how to get that kind of look if you're wanting to try that as well. In this video, I'll demonstrate transforming photographs into classic pop art inspired looks in Photoshop. My focus will be on using bold color, graphic contrast, and workflows that do start with a photo, so not illustrations. I want our results to stay rooted in photography while mimicking a pop art influenced style. In the first demo, I'll show a color wash pop art approach. In the second demo, I'll walk through a more Warhol-like, what I'm calling color blocking, where you have these different areas of color approach. And then, as I said, that optional bonus step at the end, I will show a way to add a Ben-Day dots look similar here to what Roy Lichtenstein did in the early 60s. So let me pause the video for just a moment and get set up for the demo number one. Okay, this will be demo number one, which, as I said, will be a contrasty color wash, yet photographic pop art look. This image here is a stock image from Freepik, and I will try to include the link to it in the description below the video in case you want to do some experiments with the same images I'm using before you try your own. Okay, so we always start with our image opened into the layers panel in Photoshop, and it opens as a background layer. Duplicate that layer so that you're not working on the original. So you can left click and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, the box with the plus, or while you're on the background layer, you can do a Control or Command J to jump that up as a copy. Either way, it's the same thing. And I do want to point out, for those who aren't familiar with my videos, my layers panel is at the top of the interface, properties panel at the bottom, and I have my toolbar docked right, so everything's kind of convenient for me to reach in one place. Okay, after we have our background layer, the first thing that we want to do, if you have an image like mine that has background content, you'll want to get rid of that and remove the background and just have a solid background. If you're starting with like a studio shot against a solid background, then you don't need to do this, okay? So I am going to come up to the top of the interface, and I have my contextual toolbar docked up here, and I can remove background from there. If you don't have the contextual toolbar, you can go to the window menu and just come down to the bottom and click to turn on the contextual toolbar. Or with that copy layer active, you can go to the properties panel and click on remove background there. Either way, just click and wait. Okay, and Photoshop has removed the background. So in doing that, it created this mask. So all it's retaining is what is white. The black hides the background. Okay, so let me, if I turn off this eye icon, you'll see that she is now on a transparent background. All right, so now what I want to do is add a solid color behind her that I can work with. So I'm going to come to the bottom of the layers panel, to the add new adjustment layer icon, that circle with the line through it, and come down to solid color, and I'm going to choose white. Now you could work with a black solid background if you want to, so either way, white or black, you can experiment and see what you prefer. All right. And it didn't do a pure solid white. If you are familiar on histograms, the colors go from black as 0 to white at 255. And you can see for RGB here, we haven't gone to 255. So I'm just going to doctor these and make it a pure white by adding the 5 and then click OK. All right, now again, in Photoshop, as you move up the layer stack, whatever you put higher up covers things below, and this is a solid white layer. So I want to left click on that color block and just drag it to right below the line below that image and release. And so now we have her on the white background. So now what I want to do is create a stamp layer that merges these two so that she is on the white layer for us to work with. So I've clicked back on her layer. I'm going to come to the bottom of the layers panel, click on that add new layer icon button, the box with the plus, and we get a transparent layer. It's all just empty pixels, as it were. Okay, and so now to add the stamp layer, we do a maneuver called the claw, and you simultaneously press and hold Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E. And if you look here now, it has merged these prior layers onto this new stamp layer. Okay, so we can work with that layer. So now the next thing that we want to do here is we want to convert this image to black and white. As I said, in pop art, it's very contrasty and stark and a lot of black and white. So bottom of the layers panel, add new adjustment layer. And I want to use a threshold adjustment. So it's sort of more of a postery kind of a look. Left click. Okay, we've added the threshold layer, and associated with that layer is information and processing tools in the properties panel. Okay, and again, your layers might be here, your properties might be up here. And we have a histogram with a handle. And you can click on that handle and watch what happens. If we pull it to the left, more white. If we pull it to the right, there's more black. So there's no formula, but you need to choose for yourself what a balance or proportion, I guess is the right way to say it, of white and black you want for your image. So you can just decide. It's just something you do to taste. So I'm going to leave mine there. I have mine at 134, but that's not a formula, as I said, for the threshold. Okay. So now, again, I want to add another stamp layer because I don't want to be working with an adjustment layer. So bottom of the layers panel, add new layer, box with the plus, and then Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E. And now we've merged and again have a new layer that we can work with that includes that threshold conversion for us. So now what I want to do is convert this layer that we just created to a smart object. So I will come over to the empty part of this layer, right click, and come down to where it says Convert to Smart Object and left click. Okay, and you can see that it has added a little icon in the lower right-hand corner. You can see it's not in the others, and that's what tells you it's now a smart object. And if you want, I can label this too here. So that's the stark black and white. All right, so now what we want to do, I said we were going to do this pop art look as a color wash. So we're going to come to the top of the interface to the filter menu. See where my highlighter is at the top under filter, left click, come down to neural filters, click again, left click again, and wait for the neural filters to load on the right. Okay, and we get this new interface here. And you can see there's different categories of neural filters. We want to work in the color category, and I'm going to work with color transfer. Now, something I want to point out here, you can see I have all these little on-off switches that they're all turned off by default, but whichever one I want to work with, I will turn that switch to on. If you don't see those switches, if you see like a little cloud icon with a down arrow, that means you have not yet downloaded the neural filter. So if you see that little cloud icon, just click on it and wait until each of them downloads, or the ones that you want to use download. You have to do them individually. And then once you get it, then you can turn the on-off switch. We're going to work with color transfer, so I will turn that on. And if we move over further right panel here to the settings, you'll see that it's still considered a beta. And you have the choice of working with Adobe's presets or a custom image of your own. And so this is all they give you for the presets. It's just this small little cluster of images here. What this color transfer is going to do is it's going to look at the image and say, what is the predominant color in this image? It's going to use that as a reference, and it's going to overlay that color over your entire image. So let me just show you here. If I click on the blue, or something that has a lot of blues in it, it turns blue. And before I click on another one, I'm just going to tell you too, just you can look down in this lower area here of my image, and when I click on these presets, you should see that it's processing down there. So you just have to give it time to process when you're working with it. Okay, so this one is predominantly sort of this ambery yellow, and this is green, so this should put a green wash over the image. And then this has a lot of purples and magentas, so I'm assuming it'll be a pinky purple. Okay, there we go. Now, that's if you work with the presets. You can also come over and left-click on this word custom, and if you don't like those presets that are there, you can click this little down arrow and just, let me show you, select an image of your own from your computer, and then that way you can pick an image that has a colorway that you want to work with if you don't want to use the presets. I will just continue to work with the preset, and I'll stick with the purple because I like purple. Okay, as we come down through the settings, the next choice you have is color space, okay? And it by default is on LAB. You can also choose RGB if you want. We can see if it changes the look by switching to RGB. Yeah, it's changed it slightly. Depending on which one you use, you will get different settings options and different sliders that you can choose from. So as I mentioned up front, saturation is something, I'm not a big fan of oversaturated images, but in pop art, you do want it well saturated. So if you pull it to the right, you're going to saturate it more. And again, you always have to give it time to process. And if you pull it to the left, it'll saturate it less. Okay, so since we're doing pop art, we want to skew right. Okay, and I don't want it so saturated that we don't see her definition. There we go. All right, now if you don't like the choice of some of these things and you don't want to bother to go look for an image of your own, once you choose one of these presets, you can just work with the hue slider and pull it and put different color washes on to your choice, okay? And then if you don't want to work with that, or you decide you want to do something else, you can just double click and it sets it back to 0. I'm going to stick with the purple. And then brightness, again, darker will be to the left and brighter is to the right. Okay, and again, I think I want to stick with something a little bit brighter just so it's easier to see in the video. Okay, and then it asks, are you satisfied with the results? And that's because it's still in considered a beta, so you can just skip that. That has nothing to do with anything you want to do. But you do need to choose what type of output you want. So because I converted to a smart object before I came into this interface, I want to send it out as a smart filter. That will give me the flexibility to make adjustments if I want to, but you can have other options here. Typically, if I'm not working with a smart object, I would choose new layer, but I'm going to stick with smart filter and click OK. And this will take us back to the layer stack. There we are. So now we have this new layer, and what you'll notice is by having sent it into that neural filter as a smart object, we get some sub layers. So one of them is a mask. So if you don't want that color applied to the whole thing, you can work with your brush tool or, maybe even your rectangular marquee, and you can paint black on the mask where you don't want the color to appear. So that's one thing that gives you by doing that. The other is, if you'll see down here where it says neural filters, if you double left click on that, let's say you decided, I wish I'd given it just a bit more saturation or a bit more brightness, you can make your adjustments without starting all over again and then just click OK. And it will take you back. So that's the benefit of you working with the Smart Object, is it lets you easily make changes. And so let me just put in here which one I had used so that you can remember if you're looking at this later. This was color transfer. Neural filter. Okay. All right. So now we've gotten the color wash on here. I want to do something else to this because I think there's just too much negative space in this. So I'm going to, because we're in this type of layer, I want to just do another stamp layer just to be on the safe side. So bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option and E all at the same time to get the stamp layer. And now what I want to do is I want to crop because I want this to be closer to her. So on the toolbar, come to these little kind of L and backwards L, left click, that's the crop tool, and it will give you different handles that you can pull. And depending on your image, you might need to crop different things or you might not need to crop at all. So I'm going to left click on this right handle and bring it in for her because she's sort of leaning right. I want to give her a little bit of space over here, and I want to click on this left handle and maybe just bring it into her shoulder. Okay, and I definitely don't need to do anything at the top. And then once I'm set, I'm going to click on this check mark to accept the crop and wait. Okay, or else you could hit enter or carriage return. And when you do crop it, it crops it all the way down the layer stack. One thing I want to point out, let me put that crop tool back on. I always make sure I do not delete the cropped pixels. I don't want them cropped as I'm going along. Because if I want to change my mind, I don't want them discarded. Okay, so let me just go back to here. And so now we have our color wash pop art look. So that was really fast and easy to do that. And if we turn the eye back on her, I can show you that we started with this young lady in photograph and that background, and we've ended up with a solid color wash pop art look, kind of look with this dark black and the color. So that is the end of demo number 1 on how to achieve a color wash photographic pop art look. So before we go on to demo number 2, I want to just give you a quick reminder. If you're new to my channel or have not subscribed yet and you want to be notified of future monthly Photoshop workshops that I do, please click the free subscribe button under the video, as well as the bell icon that is labeled all, and then you will get a single notification from YouTube when I release new content. So there's no spamming, there's no emailing, anything like that. If you've already subscribed, there is no need to click again. You only do that once and you're set. And I also want to let you know that in that video, in that description below the video, in addition to the links to these demo images that I will be using, I'll also include links to the topic start times. So if you want to hop around or skip around or go back to something, you just know where the start time is for each major topic. Okay, so now I'm going to pause and I will set up for demo number 2 and we'll be right back. All right, now this will be demo number 2, and in this demo I am going to do a Warhol-inspired color block portrait from this photo here. And again, this is a Freepik stock photo, and I will try to include a link to this in the description below the video as well. Now, if you're not familiar with Andy Warhol's pop art screen prints from the 1960s, what his process was is he actually started with photos, and he made stencils from him that he would use in his silkscreen process. And what he did was he used different stencils for each color that he would have on his images. Now, he wasn't, from what I've read, a perfectionist about matching the edges, so I guess we won't worry about it either. So you don't have to be too perfect lining things up. So what I want to try to show you how to do in this demo is to simulate a contemporary approach to his process of starting with a photo and making, air quotes, stencils in order to do a color block look, but we're going to do it in Photoshop. Now, one other thing to mention is if you're familiar with Warhol's imagery in his artwork, you'll know that he tended to use certain types of colors and color palettes. So if you want to stick with his type of color looks, then what I would suggest is to maybe download some images of him and then open them and just have them sitting alongside here. And then what you could do is sample the colors using the eyedropper tool, which I have my highlighter next to here. It looks like a little eyedropper, from the Warhol pictures, and then load them into the color picture to use the color picker to use as you go along, or else just wing it and use your own colors, which is what I am going to do. Okay, so now again, I said the first step is always to duplicate your background layer and work on a copy. So I'm going to do a Control or Command J and jump that copy up, or you can left click and drag it down to the Add New Layer icon, which is the box with the plus. So this is to label it the background copy. Okay. All right, so we will start from there. Now, what you might find is, as I mentioned up front, with pop art, it's very contrasty looking. And this isn't the most contrasty image, and yours might not be either. So you may need to add more contrast in order to get a good stark black and white conversion. So I am going to come to the bottom of the Layers panel, Add New Adjustment Layer icon, that circle with the line, left click, and I'm going to add a Brightness and Contrast Adjustment Layer. All right, and you can see it's been added there, and there is an associated couple of settings in the Properties panel for that layer. Now, I don't feel mine needs brightness. Yours might. I'm just going to crank the contrast all the way up to the maximum for mine by left click and just drag that handle all the way to the right. So I've added maximum contrast there. So the next step is to convert it to black and white, just like we did in the first demo. But this time I'm not going to use threshold. This time I'm going to use a gradient map. And you want to be sure before you do this that on your color picker, the foreground color is black and the background color is white. Come to the bottom of the Layers panel, Add New Adjustment Layer, circle with the line, come down to Gradient Map and left click. Okay, and it automatically converts your image to a grayscale when you get this gradient map layer. And in the associated properties panel, this is the gradient. It runs from black to white. Left click once on that gradient bar, and that opens up the gradient editor. So now you can customize, let me just scoot this over, the balance of black and white in your image. So this already has a lot of black, so I really don't need to add black, but just to show you, if you left click on the black color stop, you can pull it towards the right if you want to add more black to your image. So I'll just leave mine there. If you want to add more white to your image, then left click on the white color stop and start pulling that left. And I'll release it as I go because you don't see it real time. I'm looking to just get enough brightness. It's kind of blown his cheek a little bit, but I'm hoping that with the midpoint adjustment, I can bring back a little shadow there. So this tiny little diamond I don't know why they made it so small, is the midpoint, and you can drag that towards black if you want to get more darkness in there, more shadow, or towards white to, again, continue the towards more white. Yeah. So that brought back a little bit more shadow over here to give definition to his face. So for what I want to do, since I want to use him as the basis for my quote unquote stencils, I want to be sure that Photoshop's detection tools can detect his face. So once you get yours the way you like, click OK. All right, so now we have him converted to a grayscale. And so now I want to create a stamp layer because we can't be working with these adjustment layers. So bottom of the layers panel, add new empty layer, or add new layer, but it will be an empty layer. And then we do Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option and E all at the same time. And now we have this grayscale conversion, okay? Now, I'm going to do something for mine that you may not need to do for yours. His ear is very white, and I'm afraid that when I try to do the detecting of different parts of him, it may not see it if it's too white and too close to the background. So I'm actually going to come back to my color image and for mine. So you may not need to do this for yours. And I'm going to use the Object Selection tool. Make that active by left clicking on it. And for mine, I'm just going to loosely circle around the outside of his ear and see it'll snap in. So for that tool, I have it set to use the lasso. So that's why when I dragged it around, if yours says rectangle, you can either try the rectangle or just click the little down arrow and go with the lasso. Okay, so now I want to copy the ear from the color image to up here. So edit, copy, and I'm going to go up here, edit, paste. All right, so now we've got his ear on its own layer above him. So now I don't want to have to work with two different layers. So I want to merge these two layers. Let me just get that off of there. So this layer is already active with the blue highlight. I want to press the Shift key so I continue to keep it active. And then I want to click on this grayscale layer so they're both active, and I want to merge them. And the way I'm going to do that is to come to this little hamburger menu at the upper right where my highlighter is, come down to where it says Merge Layers, and I'm going to left click, and there you go. So now we have a grayscale, plus ear. And I'm going to convert, I'm going to add a blend mode to that just to be sure that ear is dark enough. It may not change it. There we go. All right, so, oh, my typing, well, it should read darker. See, not darkette. We're not French, darquet. All right, so this layer is going to serve as the basis, as I said, for how I'm going to create my stencils. But first, I'm going to create another layer that I'm going to want to have on the top of the layer stack, and then we'll just hide it. So first, we're going to duplicate this layer. So left click and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel. Okay, so we have now two of them. And with this upper layer active, we're going to go to the top of the interface to the filter menu, see where my green highlighter is, come down to where it says sketch, and then fly out and come down to where it says stamp. And again, this is different. So it's filter, sketch, stamp, and left click. And this is going to bring this up. Now, this is different than a stamp layer. This is the stamp filter. Okay, you have all these different artistic filters. So what you'll see on the right is, first of all, you'll see it's made it look, a lot more, less grayscale and more kind of postery. Okay, so you can see you're in Sketch and Stamp is highlighted. And as we come further right, you can also see that we're using the Stamp filter, and you have two different adjustment options with that Stamp filter. And so if you want, you can adjust these. So let's see what we do here. As we pull it to the left and watch the image, it gets more white, okay, with that light and dark balance. And if you pull it to the right, it gets a lot more dark. So there's no formula. You just have to decide for yourself how much light and how much dark you want. It's actually not bad. All right, I think I'll leave mine there. Then you also get to control the smoothness. So if you come left, you can see you get a lot more of these little cross-hatchy kinds of lines and more darkness. And then if you come to the right, it smooths it out. So there is no right way to do this. You do it to your taste, because either way will be a pop art look. So just go with whichever look you prefer. For mine and for this demo, I'm going to go with, I think, something that has a little bit more lines and definition so that we keep a photographic look. But you do it to your taste and to your interest. Okay, so once you get those two sliders set, you click OK. All right, so now we've got that, and it's not the grayscale anymore. So now we are on a Sketch Stamp filter layer. That's what we created on that layer. And what I would suggest is, for this layer, rather than the darker color from the other one, let's use a linear burn. There's a linear burn. Here we go. I'm going to do the linear burn there. And so now what we want to do with that set, we're just going to set it aside. So in other words, let's left click and turn off the eye visibility and come back to this grayscale level. And we're going to build up layers above the grayscale, but below the sketch layer. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the color blocking part. So we're going to be selecting different body parts of him, just like you saw on the Andy Warhol picture for the Marilyn Monroe, to get that color block look. So to do that, come to your toolbar and have your object selection tool active. Left click on that and be sure the black is behind it. It's the square with the arrow going into it. And on the options bar across the top of the interface, so each of these tools has their own options. So this object selection tool has the select people option in it. We want to click on that and wait for Photoshop to detect people. If you have more than one person, you'll see more than one of these circles, but we only have him. So left click on him, and then you have choice of which parts of him you want to use. Now, you might, for your color block, just want to do him entirely and then a color background. So if you want to do him as an entire person, you can do entire person, but we're not going to do that for this demo. So I'm going to start with wanting to do the facial skin, or the things around the skin around his face. So I'm going to look for, and if you watch the image, as I hover over each of these boxes, it highlights and makes a selection of that area. So definitely his nose, I want to select for the skin. I'm going to skip the mouth, the teeth, but definitely I want the ears. And this is why I wanted to be sure that we had this here so that it could easily see his ears. I want his facial skin, and I want his upper body skin. So this is creating that stencil I talked about in kind of a modern way. Once you get the areas selected that you want, then you click Apply to make the selection. And wait. Okay, so now we have the marching ants selection. So now you have to add the color that you want for your color block. So for him, I want to use a pink, like what Warhol likes to use. So I'm going to come to the bottom of the layers panel, add new adjustment layer, the circle with the line through it, left click, and come down to where it says solid color, and left click on that. and that brings up a color picker, and you can pick whatever colors you want. Or if you have like an RGB formula, you can enter the numbers for the formula. Or if you have a hex number formula for a color that you want to use, you can enter that number here. I'm just going to work on this color bar and pick a pink from in here. So I'm going to go up and towards the reds. And then I'm going to come over to the pinky, lighter pinkier colors. I don't want it to look like a real flesh. I want it to really look like a pink. Okay, so let's just say that that's good enough. And you pick whatever colors you want and then click OK to accept the color. Now, one thing I see, it missed some of his skin here. And even though we said we're not going to be perfectionists and be like Andy Warhol, I still want to clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to left, if you want to have your color go in a little bit other places that it didn't hit, left click on the mask, so be sure there's a white frame around the mask, and then we want to use the brush tool from the toolbar. It looks like a paintbrush. Left click on that, and then you want to reveal more colors, so we want to use white, so you can click on that little double-headed arrow or press the X key and make white the foreground color, and then you would just paint. So now the green is my highlighter, just for you to see where I am. A left bracket key will make the brush smaller, right bracket key makes the brush bigger. So let's say that I want to, let me make that smaller, get a little bit more pink in this area here. And he's got that razored split look that's popular. And then let me use the black and maybe just reveal a little more of his lip there, because I think it went in a little bit. Okay, and you might not want to doctor your image at all, but I just wanted to show you that you can do it if you want to. Let me get rid of that little extra hair there. There we go. All right, so then I'll make this smaller again. And come back on here, and then want to go back to the object selection tool again. So now we want to move on to our next color block. So I want to get his mouth next. So we're on the object selection tool active. Come back to the options bar, select people, left click, wait for it to detect. And then I'm going to come down after I clicked on left clicked on him. I'm going to choose mouth and apply, and then wait, and then we've got the marching ants. So again, I'm seeing that I think it missed his upper lip. Yeah, so probably want to fix that after we get the color on there. Okay, so now I want to give him a green mouth. So bottom of the layers panel, add new adjustment layer, left click, solid color, and I'm going to come into the greens. Yeah, I like sort of that kind of color, I think. Oh, I like that better because it goes with the pink. All right, so pick any color you want. So I click initially in this bar just to get me into the color range I want, and then I work in this area to click wherever I want to pick the colors. And as you can see, it goes from lighter to darker from top to bottom, and from less saturated to more saturated from left to right. And whenever you click on a color, you see the new color here and what it appears as, so you can see what you're doing. And then click OK once you get that color. And then again, I think, let's see if we can get this to show a little bit more of his upper lip. Brush tool. Make that smaller. Now, one thing I didn't show you, there. I just like seeing more of his lip. One thing I didn't show you, but will be helpful, let's just go back to the pink for a minute here, is this is a very opaque look. It looks more like an actual silk screen versus keeping that kind of photographic look that we wanted to stay with. So one way to reveal more of your photo underneath is to go over to the empty space on the layer, double left click, and bring up the layer style dialog box. And what we want to work with is blend if. So this is another way to use blend if you've used blend if before. And we're going to work on this current layer. So the pink layer that we're on, it's highlighted. And what I want to do is bring back a little bit more of the details from the photograph so we have a sense of where his facial features are. So I want to pull away here towards the left. There we go. You can see, so as we do that, we're taking away some of the white or lighter color and revealing some of the darker. But clearly that's just taking it back to the photograph, so that's no good. So what we want to do is we want to split this little handle and separate them and do a subtle transition between the grayscale and the color. And I don't know if you can see it, but right in the center of that little triangle, there's a little vertical line. So you want to press Alt or Option and left click on that, and it will split, and you can separate those. Okay, so then you can adjust them to taste. So if you want some of the previous image to show up, do that for definition. And then you can drag this other one. Yeah, so I like that better because you see some more of his facial features and you can get a better sense that it's a photographic thing. So that's just one way to help show through some and keep the photographic look that I wanted to mention. Click OK after you do that blend if. All right, then we'll turn this back on again. Now, another way to do that, if you don't want to work with blend if, but I just like to show you different tools, is then once you have that color, you can go up to your opacity at the top of the layers panel, come over to the opacity, and just either click on the word opacity and drag left, or you can click on the down arrow and pull a slider. It's up to you. And I want to lower the opacity of that green. That's a little bit too intense and I want to see more of his lips. Make this bigger to see better. There, I can see more of his mouth. And I just go back and forth till I find a look I like. There's no formulas. All right, that's not bad. And then again, I think I'll just, with the brush tool and the white, make it very small. Just try to get a little bit more of his lip in there. Okay, and again, not going to worry about it, but just to let you know that you can make the mask active with a white frame around it, and you can adjust things if you want. Okay, so now we've got two colors. So we've got the facial skin and the mouth. So the next thing I want to do is his t-shirt. So again, be sure you're on the object selection tool, which is the box with the arrow. Select people. Click on the icon for him. There's upper close, so that would be, yeah, that's his t-shirt. Left click and apply. And again, you might see different categories there depending on the image that you use, so just pick the categories that you want. And then we come over to the layers panel, add new adjustment layer, solid color, the color picker, and I think for him, I think I already said I like purple, so I'll give him a purple. It's not a bad color. Okay, and click OK. And that doesn't need any kind of opacity adjustment because it's just solid under there. All right, so now what I want to do is add a background color behind him. And because of all these weird colors and things, I just want to be sure that Photoshop knows how to select him. So I am going to left click back here on my original color image and then go to select subject. And again, I have my contextual toolbar up here, so I do it up here, but you can also do it in the properties panel. Click and wait. Okay, so now Photoshop has selected him, but we don't want him. We want the opposite of him. So we want to come across and invert the selection. I think you can also do Control or Command, Shift, and I. You could try that as an invert shortcut. So, okay, so you can see that that has inverted the selection. So now what I want to do is add a magenta color back there. So bottom of the layers panel, solid color, and I want to do a magenta because that's to me sort of a Andy Warhol-y kind of a color. Oops. Have to come back above here. Sorry. All right. So I was still back on that color layer, on the original layer. So you want to be back on your last color lock layer, then try it. Okay, so adjustment layer, solid color. Now we do a magenta. There we go. And I want it to be a very saturated, so I'm picking something from very far on the right and click OK. All right. And if you're not that, or if you're relatively new to Photoshop, or if you're haven't worked with it a long time, when you make a selection and then choose an adjustment layer, it will automatically generate a mask for you that maps to that selection that you had. So you don't have to go making it. If you don't have a selection, it will just come up with a white, an all white mask. But this way, where you see the white is what you're doing on that layer will show, and where you see the black is what's being hidden. Okay, so now we've got our color block areas that we've done until this point. Now, I just wanted to point out too that the model, oops, the model that Photoshop has at this point in time is trained to select people. So if you want to do something like this kind of color block thing, like with a dog or a car or a sneaker or whatever, then you can't use this model. What I would suggest that you do is you either use this quick selection tool and choose specific areas that you want to work with, and then so after you select each area, then you do the process of choosing the color and stuff like that, or you work with the selection brush tool and just paint on the area that you want selected, and then do the layered solid color and add your colors that way, because those two will generate selections. Okay. So that's just if you want to do something other than a person. All right, so now we have all our color blocked areas laid out. We can add our sketch and stamp filter layer back on. So left click to turn the eye back on. And so now you get that more poster look versus it still being the halftone. Now this ended up being a little messy, just the way that process works. So with that conversion, so what I want to do is add an empty mask or a white mask. Let me put it that way. Bottom of the layers panel, add new layer mask, which is the box with the circle. Use the brush tool from your toolbar, and I want to paint with black because I want to hide this messy stuff. So click there, or use the X key to make black the foreground color. And with the white frame around the mask, I'm going to make the brush bigger with the right bracket key and paint away the messy stuff there. So it's painting it on the mask to hide that little smudge. Okay, so now if you like this look with a lot of bold black, this is definitely a pop art look and a more contemporary pop art look, and it's definitely still photographic. So if you want to, you could stop right here. If you want to add some colors to other parts of this image, like his jacket or his hair, well then, or wherever else in your image might have fallen into the black area, then we will have to add those colors above this sketch stamp layer, because if you put this on top of other colors, it's going to turn them black. Okay, so one option is stop here and you're good if you like the bold black. The other option is let's keep going if you want to add more colors. So let's do that. And so we're going to add another stamp layer above here. So add new layer icon, the box with the plus, then Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E to get that stamped layer that we can work with. So now what we want to do here, hold on, I'm going to just pause for a moment and get a drink of water. Hold on. Okay, I'm back, sorry. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to my halftone or grayscale layer just to help Photoshop make the selection better. And I want to, again, be sure I have my object selection tool on. Come up to the options bar, select people, click on him. We're going to do the same process, only this time I'm going to choose his coat. So you can see if you look at the image where it's what it's calling the coat. And I'm going to apply, get my selection. Then I will come back up to the top here. And I'm going to come down to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new adjustment layer, solid color. And I think I want to add a navy jacket on here, or dark blue. There, I like that. Okay, so I'll leave mine there. And again, you do any color that you want. So now, because we have put it over this, we can get the blue to show up there. Okay. All right, now again, you could stop if you want to leave the black hair, but if you remember the Warhol image I showed at the beginning, what Andy Warhol usually did was he'd have like either little swirls of color or something to kind of indicate that there was hair there, but it wasn't a solid overall color. Now, if you want to, you could certainly do an overall color. It's your image and you're the artist, and so you can do whatever you want with it. But I'm going to try to use the generative AI in Photoshop to see if I can get some swirls here in this image. So let me add another stamp layer. Okay. And now what I want to do is I'm going to use the selection brush tool. And it looks like a paintbrush with a little dashed line and a sort of filled in overlay on it. Make sure that that's active here. And what I want to do to use the generative AI is I'm going to, first of all, be sure that this is a soft brush. So again, for that tool, we look at the options bar. I like to keep the opacity of my overlay down a bit, around 65. You can do it to taste for you, just so I can see the image through it. And then if you click on that little down arrow, you can see the size and also the hardness. And I want to keep my hardness down towards the, so hard is to the right, soft is to the left. So I'm going to keep mine down towards the soft end for this selection brush. And then what I want to do is just trace a little bit outside of this guy's hair to let the AI know where to work with. I'm not going to choose his eyebrows. and it fills in once you close the loop. Because Andy Warhol, I don't know if you know him, but from the 60s, but he would wear like a white crazy wig, and then he'd have very dark eyebrows. So I kind of like the idea of leaving this guy's eyebrows dark. All right, so now for the generative AI, I'm going to go up here to the contextual toolbar, and I'm going to click on generative fill where it said it. And what it does is it gives you a prompt box where you can type what you want the generative AI to do. So, and it's kind of a crapshoot what you'll actually end up with. So we'll see how this works. So I'm going to use a prompt. Let's see here. Add random patches of bright yellow to suggest wavy hair, and keep the current image alignment. What I found that these things do, and especially like Nano Banana and whatever, is they shift things around, and it still might do it. But in order for things to work out, you tend to need to not only tell it in just plain old English what you want the generative AI to do, but also what you don't want it to do. So I don't want it to shift things around. I want it to keep the current image alignment. So hopefully it will do that. Then you come over and see where this G is. If you left click on that, you see the different models that you can use. Definitely do not use the Firefly models if you're using prompts. They just come out with really crazy things. I've had the best luck with the Gemini model, so I'll just try the newer one and see how that goes. And it still might end up crazy, but we'll see. So once you get those two things set, then you left click on generate and you wait and you kind of hope. As I said, if you don't have in your plan access to the partner models, or you've used up your credits, then what you can do is use the paintbrush and just paint on areas using a color. This is exactly what I wanted. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Okay, I'm always so happy when these things work out with, because you never know with the generative AI. Now, another thing I want to point out is when you do work with generative AI and use Adobe's Firefly models, you will, in your properties panel, get 3 options of things that you can look at and choose the one you like. When you use the partner models, you will only get 1 variation. So if you don't like what it generated, first of all, you can come here in the properties panel and maybe either just generate and try it again, and because typically you don't get the exact same result each time, even with the same prompt, or you can try modifying the prompt. Okay, but I feel pretty pleased that it did keep the alignment. It didn't shift it around, so I feel pretty good about that. Okay, so now let me first of all get off of this tool and go back to my lasso tool. I just sort of use, you don't have to keep going back to it. It's just like my neutral tool. It's like if I've used my camera and I set it back to its base settings so that I don't start shooting and it's in aperture priority and I want to base in something else. Okay, so now let's add another layer. So layers panel, add new layer, and we're going to do another stamp layer here. So Shift, Control, or Command, Alt, or Option, and E. So this is the Warhol-like color block. Look. Okay, so again, I think I already told you, so you can stop when you're at this stage where it's more, or even at this stage where it's more black, or else you can come and just add some more color on top of the black. And then if you want to play with either the generative AI or just paint on some color swatches with your paintbrush, all of those things would work. And so you could be finished here. But I told you at the beginning that I was going to show you an optional bonus step. So let me just pause for a moment because it'll make it easier for the timestamp. Okay, so this is the optional bonus step, and I was going to show you how to achieve a look like Roy Lichtenstein did with those Ben Day dots, as they were called, Ben Day. It was named after a man named Benjamin Day. You can add the dots either globally over the entire image or selectively on certain parts of the image. The Ben Day dots were actually a printing technique that was used to create shading and textures and color in print images back when. So I think what I want to do is what Lichtenstein had done on the image that I showed you, and just try to put the Ben Day dots on this guy's face. So I want to first of all select his face. So let me come back down here and see. Well, actually, let me see if I can just reuse this mask here. That maybe will save some time. So if you want to reuse a mask, you can copy it. You would press Alt or Option and then left click on the mask and keep that Alt or Option pressed and pull it up. There we go. Let's see how this works. So this could be pretty good here. All right, and so let me, again, let me just duplicate this, and I will take the mask away from this layer. There we go. So we have a backup in case anything goes screwy here. All right, so we're on the layer, and then this is the layer that I want to add the Ben Day dots to. And again, that's a Roy Lichtenstein kind of a thing. All right, so in order to do that, we want to go up to Filter at the top of the interface. Come down to Pixelate, there we go. And then we want to fly out to Color Halftone. So it is Filter, Pixelate, Color Halftone, left click. And we get this Color Halftone dialog box. And you get to choose the size of the radius that you want to use. The larger the radius, the larger the dot. So I'm going to, I think I don't want mine massive, so I think I'll keep it under 20. Maybe I'll leave it at 19. We'll see how big that is. Maybe it'll see. And then the other thing that I like to do is I like to set these channel degrees to 45 degrees. So I'm just covering it and typing. Right. So then once you get that, then you can click OK. And there we go. Can you see it? We've added our Ben Day dot, so that saves some time to use that, reuse that mask. That was good to think about that. And so, again, that could be fine the way it is, or you might want to add a blend mode to that. I don't know. So up in the Layers panel here on the right, the blend modes are under where it says Normal. So if you look, click on that little arrow, and I find usually Overlay or Soft Light. Ooh, I like what Soft Light does because then it goes with the background. Okay. So there we go. So let me come down to the bottom. We have our starting image, and we have still a photographically based but more pop art look at the end. And again, you could have stopped without the Ben Day dots, and you could have stopped even back with the black. So it's just up to you, what steps you want to include in your workflow. So that is the end of demo number 2 plus the bonus step. And I hope you enjoy this. So after a brief definition of the pop art movement, we created 2 pop art inspired looks from photographs in Photoshop. And then we just tried this optional Ben Day dots technique. And I'd say you can use these workflows as a starting point or mix elements from both of the different demos and workflows and adjust them to suit the character of your images. So I'd say just have fun playing with it and take care.